Welcome to China Manufacturing Decoded from Sofeast, the podcast where we take you through the major news and topics facing importers and manufacturers in China and Asia today.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of China Manufacturing Decoded, our podcast that comes out once a week. I'm Renaud Anjoran, and joining me today is Amirnovin. Hey, how are you doing, Andrew?
Very good. Good to be here again, Renaud. It's been a while, so yeah, nice to talk to you again.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for joining. Yeah, for those who don't know, so Andrew is part of the team here at Sofeast. He's the head of new product development, and his main expertise and past experiences are around reliability engineering and quality management. Is it fair to say it this way?
Yes, it is actually. Thank you very much. Yeah, my over 20 years of experience has been pretty much on quality, reliability, and testing, manufacturing, and so basically I've been everywhere and trying to learn more about how to manufacture products in a high quality, high reliability way, all the way from design and development to shipping product.
Right. And Andrew worked with pretty large companies, including Nokia, AT&T, LG, Medtronic, and so on. Okay, so the topic of today is we keep helping our clients, you're looking for this kind of PCBA supplier. Oh, you're looking for that kind of display supplier. Oh, like this is a good one versus this one is not so good, right? But then what exactly does that mean? A good factory versus a bad factory in general. I kind of get to think about this a bit over the weekend, and also since we have our own contract manufacturing facility, what we've been doing a lot of things, putting in place a lot of systems, trying to get the right teams in place with the right competencies and so on. And I was thinking, well, it's really the same. It kind of all boils down to three things that are very, very important. And if you get these three things right, well, you're going to have good quality, no surprises on cost, reliable delivery times. If safety might be an issue, safety of people, but also safety of customers. Yeah, this also is going to be better if the factory is better managed. But what does it mean really to have a well-managed factory, right? And so I jotted down three key elements. So it's like a stool, and you need the three legs, right? And if one of the legs is missing or two of the legs are missing, then it is not going to work well, basically, right? So if I give a very quick overview, and then we can go into each of the three elements. The first one is the management system. From the top of the company, the role of the person that people see as the boss, and what they observe, and then what management systems go all the way through the organization. And really, without that, you're gonna keep having people taking shortcuts and all kinds of issues. So that's the first one. The management system has to be really effective and pull people in working in a certain way. The second one is about manufacturing itself and the processes, manufacturing processes. And if you work with maybe an assembly supplier, you also need to look at the second tier, third tier suppliers, the sub suppliers, because it's all the way through the supply chain. But there are a lot of things that must be done to ensure that the manufacturing processes are consistently delivering, the expected output, right? And we'll go more into that, what that means. And the third one is a little bit about the art and science of developing new products. because some manufacturers are doing great with a product that they developed 10 years ago, but how long is that going to last, right? I really think this is another leg of the stool, and it's not just about making the right kind of products that really resonate with consumers or maybe fix a problem for business customers, but it's also about how these products are developed and how they are transferred to manufacturing, because so many issues come from that. What we've seen in Asia, in China, in Vietnam, in many cases this is not done well, right? So we'll let's go into these three legs of the stool one by one. So first is the management system, the effective management system in a factory. I mean, whenever there are issues and we start to look into what happened in that factory and what did it do and what is it that they should have done and so on. I mean, the more you dig and the more you go down to the root of the root cause of the issues, basically, issues in a management system are pretty much always a root cause. I mean, would you agree with that? We can always go down to that as the ultimate root cause of pretty much all the issues.
I agree in a way, because I think that basically management drives the whole production process, and I think that if management doesn't understand exactly how the production should be running, you run into all kinds of issues. I mean, it could be from just tuning up and getting the equipment running, as well as number of labor and operators needed and managers on the line. And so, I mean, things could go really, really wrong if the management doesn't have a good handle on tracking the day-to-day operation, day-to-day issues, and focus on the KPIs in the manufacturing. It is really a very, very critical job when it comes to production and manufacturing. The management role is the key.
Yeah. So basically, to translate a little bit what you said, if you don't have the right number of people, then maybe management is not allocating the right resources to hire the people and to also to have good HR people to do that work of researching, evaluating, hiring, and ensuring that they are trained, right? If management doesn't pay attention to the right KPIs, then people, whenever there's an issue, people get into these meeting rooms and they keep talking for 2 hours about, but it's the fault, so the production guy will say, well, it's for the purchasing because, these parts have problems. Also, it's the fault of planning because we didn't know about that and blah, blah, blah. And we didn't have some of the materials were not ready or something. And then the other guys will say, well, it's the fault of the salesperson who did not tell us in time to order, or it's the fault of the supplier, blah, 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 blah. And it goes round and round. So that
many stories on that one, and you are right on the ball on that one. I mean, that is almost a day-to-day thing in many productions that I've heard about or talked about. You've got exactly that situation. You've got daily morning meetings going on, and everyone is coming up. Okay, did you fix this? And then the answer would be what? And that is right there is the problem. They don't know exactly. They don't communicate with each other well. They don't have a good tracking system. They don't document the issues properly. They don't have trained staff when they see an issue, what they're supposed to be doing. They don't implement the ECNs on time until the last minute comes in, and they try to implement it because they don't have approval. And then they go for approval. The manager has to approve. He has no idea what that product. He doesn't understand the product. He doesn't understand design, and he has this very important ECN that he has to. This. I'm just describing one day in the life of manufacturing.
Oh yeah.
And he doesn't understand what he's supposed to be approving. So what does he do? Well, he's got a title of director of quality. He has to approve this. And it's going to look bad if he's asked questions. What is this about? What is this? How do I do it? How do I know it? Well, you know what he does? He approves it. And here and there, maybe most of the time it would work itself out. That one time it didn't. And then now you have products coming out left and right, failing. And then people are trying to understand what happened. We did everything right. Well, it takes only one person who doesn't know what he's doing or what he's supposed to be doing. And then all of a sudden the whole chain breaks down. And this is the key element in production that a lot of people forget. There are so many variables already. And if the management is one of them, you've got the whole thing. Right.
Correct. Yeah. So for listeners who are wondering what ECN is, it's when there are engineering changes. So when, for example, the customer might say, well, we've had this issue with that whatever, that material of that part of the product or something, or a little issue. Okay, we need to add a functionality here or a fail-safe feature or something. And then it goes into the redesign of the product. But then before it's all approved, and then it may impact everything, right? So it usually has to go through a review. And you're right, if they don't have the proper process for approval of the ECN, well, that's an example. Yeah, that's a good example. They're not going to ask maybe the firmware guy and the PCB design guy and the supplier, so we're going to change this. Can you think of what may go wrong? Okay. Oh, this is very tricky. It might go, okay. So how do we do maybe to test it on a small scale or something just to make sure it's okay? How do we handle that? Right. And what you're saying is that because they don't even know, what the process is, and it just goes straight into somebody's desk for an approval. But all of these reviews have been skipped, and because they don't have that process, it's not in their systems, right?
Yeah, it's a combination of all kinds of things. I mean, it's the process itself, it's the knowledge of the individual trying to approve. If he doesn't have technical knowledge and the process knowledge, it's going to affect the whole thing, especially if he's not honest in his work. I'm an individual. When I don't know, I will say I don't know. Hey, you put me this for approval. I'm not going to approve it because I have nothing to add to this. I don't know how to do it. Can you approve it because you're technical? I will pass it on to somebody who knows what they're doing. You shouldn't just approve something just because your title says that you have to approve it. And I think that's just one issue. But then you've got this meeting, people start blaming each other, and exactly what you just pointed out, they'll start all the way to customers saying, we don't know what the customer's talking about. We know for sure that this thing is working. So then I think it must be the supplier. So they will be discussing things that they don't have any facts, no process to troubleshoot and get down to the bottom of the issue, no 8D document, no 8D process. As you know, the 8D is the entire, so I'll let you explain that to the listeners. So in general, what you need is a very well-defined process, but then you also need a management that is knowledgeable and trained exactly for that role and technically capable. And then you've got teams that work together in an honest and cohesive way. It takes only one guy in the team to do the things that he wants his way, and then everything will break down.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And so you mentioned AD. So, and really it ties up to, another important topic is and it's definitely linked to management systems. Do people know how to solve problems? Because there are problems every day. And what we discussed so far is that they keep putting out fires, but they don't really want to do the work of going down to the root of the problem and really working on it. And that might have a lot of implications in different, several departments of the factory and so on. And if they're not ready to do that, then this factory is never going to really improve, right? So back to the AD. So there's a number of different approaches to solve problems, at the root so that they do not recur. 8D is one of them, getting a lot of popularity. Originally, I think it's from Ford Motors Company, and it's a very good tool when you need a very systematic approach that's documented and very easy to share. So typically you ask a supplier to fill it out, and then they share it with you and you can comment on that and so on. And it makes a lot of sense, especially when there's been an escape in quality, right? So it's not like, it's more like corrective action rather than preventive action. It's more like there's been something wrong.
Yeah. Basically, 8 disciplines and is exactly right. You're trying to find the root cause of the issue and basically trying to get to the bottom of what is the real cause. But what is cool about 8D is that you have a systematic way of doing it. You're almost like a Six Sigma process. You're looking at the whole thing systematically and looking at all the way from what, why, and who, and
where, when,
following the whole process until you get to a point where you can't go further, and then you root cause the issue.
Yes, right. And the last thing I want to mention here is that the owner, the founder, the person who's created the company really has an enormous influence on the kind of behaviors that people tend to follow in that factory. And if that person, maybe comes from a background where they worked in a very highly organized place, and maybe they have a technical background and so on, and they really understand, the complexity of running the business itself, then that, and also if they like the idea of, working to rules and not making exceptions, not taking shortcuts and so on, and he does not let his staff take shortcuts, then that has a tremendously positive influence, right? Versus the boss who comes from a sales background, doesn't understand anything about operations, is all about striking deals with his suppliers to get a good price, and with the customers, and always chasing rabbits, as they say, going out and trying to get some new customers, but not really caring about what actually happens once they have the order. Then that can be a really, really bad supplier to have, a really bad factory, displaying all of the issues that we just mentioned. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. I mean, there are all kinds of individuals that are the founders, and their personality, the way they run the business, their education, their background, their skill set, all of that matters. How it's going to reflect on the company and the management of the company and the staff. I think that old-fashioned way, of course, the company owners had too much control on the staff and basically paralyzed the staff on empowerment. Staff didn't know what they had to do. They always had to get approval from the big boss, the owner, and that really didn't work well in the past. So we have seen in the newer, more modern owners and CEOs, they're more hands off. They hire the right people, but then they give them a lot of autonomy and empower them to take action. And then they basically start working with the results, and instead of, paralyzing them and innovation and things like that. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that how they are going to manage based on their knowledge is going to impact the overall outcome of the quality of the production.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, quality, cost, on-time deliveries and everything. Yes. Okay, so let's get to the second pillar, or the second stool of the second leg of the stool, which is really running manufacturing processes with, let's say, good practices. And And of course, all of this comes from good management systems, but you have some companies that have some good management systems and let's say the soft stuff. But whenever it comes to the hard skills of actually how to make their processes run, it is no longer very good. So what is really important is to, from what we've seen and from discussions with various people, of course, you need competent people. So you need to make sure that they get the necessary amount of training, of exposure to to develop their skills. Of course, you need process controls in place so that when people are working, they know if they're doing it right or they're doing it wrong. And whenever it's a little bit of a complicated process, keeping the variables that really impact the output of the process and under control. Really communicating, it comes down to communicating with the process and seeing when it starts to go a little bit too much off target or there's a high proportion of parts maybe out of tolerance, then there's really an issue, and it there might be some changes in the process, but after that again, the process needs to be under control to keep working consistently as desired. And that is very tightly linked to preventive maintenance, because if you want a machine, if you want a piece of equipment to work as expected, well, you need to keep it clean. You need to keep inspecting it. You need to replace maybe some of the parts before they break or before they start being eroded or maybe before the blade is no longer sharp, for example, and so on. So it's very, very tightly linked, of course, process controls and preventive maintenance. And then the planning system. I mean, I've been to a lot of Chinese factories, and then when they say, "Oh, yeah, we have an ERP system," and then you ask, "Okay, so what modules do you use?" Actually, very seldom, except for the big manufacturers, but very seldom do they actually use the traditional MRP modules around material control, production control, and when you ask to see their system, they seldom even have a good Excel table, which is just amazing. Now this is getting better, of course, over time, and this is not an issue with the very large companies, but a lot of SMEs really are struggling with that. So this is sort of a short list of what really makes it possible to run manufacturing processes the right way, without having constant disruptions. Oh, this equipment is down. We just found out we have these issues and we did not even see them coming, and all kinds of things like that. Does that sound right? What do you think?
Yeah, totally. I think that as you mentioned, really manufacturing process really is based on two. One is a documented, clear process, but also how could we do this consistently? Because if you don't have a process, but if you have a process and you don't do it consistently, then you still have an issue. And each one of those are really an important item for discussion, because first you need a documented process that is detailed all the way down to actually who does what and how. Mm-hmm. And then you need to have, as you mentioned, trained staff that really need to understand and have the technical know-how how to implement that process and procedure exactly how it's documented. Then you need the management system that actually approves those, and the QA system that checks and inspect those processes and work. And then once you have this whole thing working like a clockwise, then you're going to have a production environment that is going to deliver a good quality product on target and on cost and safely. If you're missing any one of these areas, you got an untrained assembly person. Even a new assembly person who's been trained well, there's a possibility of high rate of failure from that line, just that one issue alone. And then if you got individuals that don't understand the big picture of how this product is going to be used, and then they're developing, for example, test plan based on some old standard that doesn't apply for that product, and it applies for a tank and airplane, and here it is, they're applying for this consumer electronics. You're going to run into all kinds of problems. And I think really you laid it out really well for the audience. The management need to understand what it is that they're building. Then they need to have a very consistent process that consistently produces results on target, and then you're going to end up having a good product.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yes. And you mentioned something that is seems pretty basic, pretty innocuous. It's to have process discipline. Actually, people working to standard. Okay, of course, as you say, there has to be a standard way of doing the work, and people have to be trained to that standard for sure. But then one of the first things when you walk into a factory, and maybe it's an assembly workshop, maybe that's where it's most obvious. And then, are they actually working to standard? You can look at the work instructions, especially if there are photos and a few drawings. And then sometimes you say, but he's not doing it the same way, or he's doing this, but he's not doing step number 4 or whatever. Right. And they're like, oh, yeah, right. Well, the work instruction, it's needs to be a whatever, they might have some excuses, but really the line leader should be on the spot to be like, hey, you,
yeah,
how come this operator is not working to standard? What have you been doing? What is your job? Because one of the main jobs of the line leader is to make sure that the, standards are okay and people understand them, are trained to them, and actually work to standard. I mean, this is pretty much the main job of the line leader.
Well,
of course,
you said something that really made me think of something else that happens a lot, and that is, for example, all the operators, everybody is still trained and doing well, but here's a guy who's supposed to issue updates to the work instruction, and here it is, he got either lazy or he got the information late, like the night before, and he comes to work, and all of a sudden people are saying the line is crashing, the line is down, everything is failing, a final test, and they have no idea what's going on. And then he realizes, oh my God, there was new work instruction and I didn't update it. And of course, it takes a while, until they find out what happens. But by the time they find out, who knows, hundreds of these products and boards and assemblies that have been done. And now somebody has to rework all of that because of one mistake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. And by the way, why, how comes they started production before readiness of all the elements? Or maybe they were not even made aware of that change. Yeah, that's another big issue. And again, as I said before, it can all be traced back to the management system. So that one really is the foundational one. Okay, and then let's go to the third sort of pillar, if you want, is that you need to have well-designed products that are properly transferred to manufacturing. And as I said before, it's both an art and a science. So the art is about, okay, what exactly does the market want, and how can we make what they want? And a lot of our customers really are great at that, right? They come up with really innovative products, amazing products, and we help them cross the finish line, get it into production and on the market. But that in itself, what they're doing is creating an amazing amount of value, right? When in the end, of course, when the product does sell, does get market traction and so on. So that's kind of an art, okay? But you need somebody to have it. Or maybe you work closely with some customers who do that very well. But the second part really is a must in the manufacturing organization, what I call transferring to manufacturing with low risk. That's what we usually also call the new product introduction process. All right. So if okay, we've heard so many stories, disaster stories, right, about a company wherever, in the US, they work with a design house and they do some of the design, and then they get to a final prototype, and they fly to Shenzhen when it was still okay, or now they get on a Zoom call with a manufacturer, and they say, here's the prototype, here's what it is, here's how it works, here's all the CAD drawings, here's all the information we have, here's how it should work, go ahead and, can you make it? Yeah. Okay, no problem. Any issues? How long is it going to take? Yeah. We need a little bit of preparation, of course, and we need to order the materials. Maybe, give us 1 month before we get all that. Okay, great. Keep going. And you know what happens there, right? The manufacturer says, okay, they look at the prototype and they're like, where can I buy, this plastic part? Okay, I know. Where can I buy this board? And okay, I know. I'm going to farm it out to these guys. Where can I buy the batteries? Okay, over there. And where can I buy the packaging? Okay, so I cut some parts or whatever. I send it to the suppliers. They're going to make their part, and then when it all comes to me, I just assemble, make sure the prototype works together nicely. And hopefully they do an engineering build before, just so that they actually know how to assemble it, and they understand how it all comes down together, and they can do some basic testing. And from the customer's point of view, it might look great, right? Okay, well, these guys are fast. They don't even charge me for the, for sourcing the components. They already know all the suppliers. It looks so easy. And then what happens, right? It's an extremely high risk, especially with very new products that are very, really different from other products that they were making before. It's an extremely high risk of running into issues in mass production, and also once the products are in the field, right?
Yeah, and I think that you kind of brought another point that I think our listeners, if they're entrepreneurs, they should really pay attention, because if you got a product that is low volume and you take it to a highly skilled manufacturer, they're going to ask for a lot of money to produce your product, and they will produce it very well, but they will charge you a lot. Mm-hmm. So the pros on that situation is that, the manufacturing on that situation is bulletproof. It's a solid production. They have turned it into some kind of automation, and they know exactly what goes wrong, and they can fix it right away. So the only thing that is going to be going wrong is going to be design related, which is your own design, mm-hmm. and then maybe some component and supplier issues. However, they're going to charge you arm and a leg. Now, the reverse is that, okay, you go to a smaller production environment, smaller manufacturer. So they will charge you very fairly, but what you end up having is that they are not necessarily fully automated. A lot of manual, a lot of areas that are not quite processed out and the consistent process. And so they will have some manufacturing issues, which will be combined with your component and design issues. And then that's where the mayhem happens. Here it is, you have an issue. Nobody knows, is it manufacturing? Is it production? Is it supplier, component, design? What is it? And there's going to be a lot of finger pointing, production to the designer, designer to the production, and the production to the supplier of the component. There's just going to be a lot of that happening, and then time wasted until they figure out exactly what happened. So you get what you pay for sometimes. That's something that entrepreneurs need to understand, that you go with a smaller manufacturer, you're going to be having some risk that you just have to be able to handle it. And on the other hand, you could also go for a manufacturer like ours, where everyone is well trained, our processes are in order. We're not big enough, like the big boys, but big enough that we know what is required to have a consistent, well-managed production environment. And that is the key. They need to really get exactly what they're getting into, and then with that, they're going to have less risk.
Right. And yeah, well said. And maybe some people are wondering, okay, what exactly makes all that difference? Is it just the same as, good practices in manufacturing, as we mentioned on the second pillar? Not exactly, right? New product introduction, it's really a process where you have people, reviewing the designs, challenging them, doing some testing to failure to understand where the weaknesses are, and iterating on the design. Every time there are prototypes, they are tested. So over time, the quality standard and the testing plan gets defined and refined, so that it's already relatively mature by the time it goes into mass production. There's all kinds of things like that, right? When you say, okay, everything is ready, and we have the tooling, and we have the testing plan, and we know exactly how to assemble it, and we have the packaging and everything. You still want to go very, to go with little steps. Again, if it's a new product, there might be some issues, some risks that are not well understood yet, until this new product is actually on the line, on the production line, being put together by operators, using the same manufacturing processes, also the same testing stations as will be used in mass production. So you do at least one pilot run pre-production before you go into mass production, and then you see if there are any critical issues, major issues. What do we do with that? Should we do a second run? Sometimes we do a second run, sometimes a third run, because, yeah, as you said, some issues are related to the readiness of the manufacturing processes. Some are related to the readiness of the testing stations, and some are, and some are related to what the suppliers made. So that there's a lot of components and materials coming from suppliers, and some of them might have some issues, especially if they're custom designed for this product, and of course some issues might actually come from the design. Again, some design issues that were not caught, because sometimes they're very tricky. Sometimes they are not caught in certain circumstances, and then you get to be lucky to catch them early. Everything works fine, except when it starts to be a little bit hot and humid, and now the design doesn't allow us to have the process window, that doesn't allow us to set the parameters right for example, for plastic injection molding. Oh, well, the people who did the design, never really thought about that. And sometimes it's very tricky.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are so many variables when it comes to NPI process, and all it takes is one, short-sightedness and or cutting corners in quality and reliability and testing because you don't have time, and then you're looking for trouble at the end. I think that the one that really I have seen over and over happening, at least in the past, is when project managers and or basically product owners, they will look at the product and they will say, nah, we really don't need to test that many samples. no, we really don't need to do so many testing. No, we don't need to do that particular test case for the
Right.
reliability because it's costly and time consuming or it takes too much samples. And it takes just someone who is not an expert in that area, but they have power to stop that progress on that area. And it takes that alone would basically stifle the whole project. What I've seen a lot
Yes.
is when you've got a very knowledgeable reliability engineer or manager who writes a very detailed, comprehensive reliability test plan, and then, of course, when you got a complicated project, and you definitely need to test all aspects of what could happen in the field so that you can prevent it from happening and then have a solution for it and fix it in the during the MPI process. However, when such a comprehensive plan, sometimes it all depends on who wrote it and what the product is. Sometimes the comprehensive plan is lengthy. You end up having, for example, maybe 40, 50 test cases that could take 3 weeks to do it. And on the other hand, maybe it's not necessarily duration of the test, but it's just the kind of test that you have to do. They're complicated and cost more because it takes a certain equipment to do very proper testing. For example, functional testing while the environment is changing, or halt testing and HAS testing. And so when you're doing these kind of tests, if you don't have very knowledgeable team, either on the MPI side or a management side, who don't support those kind of tests, you end up having all kinds of failures in the field. Almost game.
Oh, yes. And when these failures lead to potential safety issues, then you no longer you not only have a warranty cost and return cost and reputation cost issue.
Maybe you can mention some of those that has happened in the past for our audience. Some of the serious catastrophic failures, reliability failures.
Yeah, the
Samsung.
Usually we talk about the Boeing 737 Max.
Yes.
Or the
so many
Samsung Note 7.
Yeah. They lost billions of dollars and lost huge amount of customers. And if it was any other company, they would have been out of business for the amount of money they lost. I think it was 5 billion what actually observed and calculated, but in reality it was probably a lot more than that.
In Samsung, yes, right. Okay, so I think, thanks. So I think we did a nice job covering all this. And one last comment I would make is that some factories where the second pillar about manufacturing processes are good, but the third one about engineering and bringing new products to production is poor, and some others where it's the opposite. And then you have some cases where maybe the engineers are really great and the products are really forward-looking, but then they keep having quality issues and rework and so on because on the manufacturing side they're not good. And in some other cases, they might be very good, very disciplined on the manufacturing side, which is kind of a daily repetitive work with a lot of preventive actions and things like that. Maybe they do that very well, but maybe the people who develop the new products, they don't do a good job, and then that creates all kinds of issues coming from left and right, and the poor manufacturing people are really suffering from that. So,
one more important thing that I think I just remembered that our audience might be wondering, okay, so how do we do this so that everything works together? Well, first off, you have to make sure that you have well-designed product, well-tested, and it's a good product going into production. Then you need to make sure that you have suppliers that are audited and I'm talking about well audited in auditing principles. How for example, your supplier is capable, technical, and everything. And then production the same way. You need to make sure your manufacturer has been audited properly for their capability for building your product, and they have actual capability to in consistency, and let's say been proven by other customers that they have that they can build real good products. And then you are going to lower your risks of having bigger issues in the long run.
Yeah, that's a nice summary. Thanks, Andrew. We're running to the end of the episode here. Thanks a lot, Andrew. That's
my pleasure.
That was a nice discussion. I hope that our listeners found it helpful. And so, by the way, to the people who listen, if you listen to this on Apple Podcasts, on Stitcher, and so on, please just log in that app and give us a 5-star review and maybe a little comment. That really helps keep us motivated to put out this free content out there with no sponsor, no. We do this to help the community, to help people learn, but we need a little bit of feedback, a little bit of encouragement, right? And on that note, again, thanks again, Andrew, and to the listeners, well, we'll take a little break around the holiday season because usually people don't really listen to many business podcasts. And after that, you will hear from us in January. Okay, well, have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share because it will really help others discover us too.